In 2009, I was invited to come to Milan to be at the DMI conference, Design Management Conference, and host a workshop on service design. 2009 was a really busy year for me. I do remember because I just before like the day before, I was in Kuopio in Finland, where Satu Miettinen invited me to do a lecture on design thinking and service design at her school. And I flew first to Amsterdam for a stopover and directly to Milan and to be at the DMI conference. Now, I expected about 20, maybe 25 people to attend the workshop, and they put me in this room. And if you're a facilitator, you know the situation that you specifically around when the service design thinking, when and I plan to do this customer journey mapping exercise. Obviously, I had my pre-printed canvases there, and I want people to learn by doing. So I had paper, I had pens, and the whole thing. But the room didn't really have any wall space. Okay, so I'll try to figure it out. Usually, we either work on tables or on the floor, so I was kind of figuring out how to deal with that. It was a very small room. 50 people came. I think more even, because I don't think I stopped counting. But it was 50 people in a room that could probably hold 10 to 15. So people were sitting in rows, and so we gather all kinds of chairs, and there were people standing. And here I was, trying to kind of do this workshop on journey mapping. So people were working on paper and pen on their laps, and very cumbersome, but still. In hindsight, it was actually quite successful because there was so much interest. Now, at that time, it was totally stressed, and it was like, what's going on? Now thinking back, it was actually pretty cool. Anyway, I remember that really well. I also remember at that conference meeting a lot of people who were interested in design management, and I met people who are still friends, and so it's been a very pivotal moment. Now, the guy who invited me, who was the MC for that conference, was Guido Stompff. Guido, he's been around, in the world of service design and design thinking for as far as I can remember. He's always been there. So I'm really, really proud to have him as my guests today on the show. Guido is one of those people that combine, the creative mind and the sort of scientific and almost philosophical mind. I really like listening to him. He wrote an amazing book. Unfortunately, it is still only in Dutch, but it's going to be translated. I'm pretty sure of that. But it's called Radical Change in Small Steps. It's been a bestseller. But there's a story behind the book that is just as intriguing as the book itself, because it's a story about resilience and creativity and creative energy. Anyway, I enjoyed the conversation. So I hope you do too. So here we go.
If I would describe myself, regardless whatever happens, I will always describe myself as a designer. I can't help myself, and has something to do, if I go back in my own past, when I was a small boy, I was already designing, but I didn't understand then. I do understand now, because even at the age of, let's say, 7 or 8 years old, I'm a little bit older than most listeners probably, but I was watching the first Star Wars movie ever, the number one, and most people were collecting items, and I was drawing new spaceships because they could be better. I was pretty sure about that.
You were improving.
Yeah. I was already like this.
The Star Trek.
It's idiotic to have a round shape kind of spaceship or stuff like that. That we can do better than that. And I was doing that already at that age, and I never changed. So, and it took me a long, long time in my life to understand that this particular way of thinking, to look at the world and to start thinking like, hey, we could also do it a little bit differently, and what would it work? How would it work out? That's basically what I'm doing all day, and I did that my entire life. And I worked as a designer, and I worked as a marketeer, and I worked in communications. I worked in art, but I was always looking with the same kind of eye, like how can we get nice things? Like for instance, if we take a look at art, what can we put together which will change the original meaning of the things apart from each other?
Yeah.
How could we put those things together? But it's always like, what can we do? And so if I have to define myself, and it doesn't sound like a very personal guy, because I'm also a father. I also have 3 children who are studying now. I'm happily married, so I could also start over there. But if I have to define myself, I always say I was born to be a designer, but it took me 20 years before I understood I was one.
So you're born to be a designer when you're 7, you're 8, you're designing spaceships. And so where did that come from? Do you know? Is it in your family? Is it something that is it in your DNA?
I'm not sure about that. I know that I have one brother, and he is also remarkably creative in rethinking. In his case, businesses and education. Mm-hmm. So in a way, it should be somewhere in our DNA. That's possible. I don't know exactly. It's more like.
But your father and your mother, no creatives in the family.
No. I don't have a father or a mother who is an artist or something like that. Nothing at all. No.
All right. So were they surprised that they basically created these children? Like,
I don't know. I never asked them actually. So that's because we took other I would say specific things from them that we incorporated. And I'm not saying that's DNA or that's educated. How do you say cultivated? Mm-hmm. I don't know. But my father was an excellent teacher, and he was really how do you say? Mm-hmm. Considering students and what they need. He was one of the first looking for ways to deal with how do you name that? Phalanx, I don't know. Anxiety to fail.
Sure, yeah, okay, yeah.
Blackout, stuff like that. He was one of the first teachers who was actually coaching students, changing the way how exams are done and stuff like that for those kind of people who have these kind of fears, who have blackouts during exams and stuff like that. So he was really a teacher.
Sounds
like
very
that.
Creative to me.
In a way, yeah, that's true. But what I was saying a bit more, that my brother and I, we're both nowadays in education and trying to change the face of education, and that's something that we got from the.
There you go. Dad. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's not so different. But but that's also being very empathic, right? So not saying, well, this is just the way it is. This is how we teach. Deal with it, but saying, hey, wait a minute, they have all these anxieties, and they might. I have to change the way I offer.
Well, that's a very good observation. Thanks, Arne. Right. In a way, what I learned from him, and my mother's a psychologist, is always to take the other very serious in what they say and what they do and how they think, rather than saying he's wrong, you should do it differently or whatever. It's more like how is he thinking? What does he need?
Exactly, which is something that you kind of took that to design, but
eventually,
Yeah, eventually, but it's yeah, exactly right. So, but so so that is sort of interesting because it is all about, empathy and understanding kind of how other people see the world and how they, experience things, and then being able to say also to see, hey, the way we offer it is actually wrong, so we can change the way we offer things to
Yeah,
fit with their needs, which is designing basically, and redesigning a system. So that's redesigning the spaceships. That's anyway.
that's where I started. Yeah.
Yeah. So where did you go to school? Where were you born? Where was that?
I was born in the southern part of the Netherlands, Zeeland.
Ah,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
where in Zealand? Where in Zealand is that?
Terneuzen, which
Terneuzen.
is
Ah, just
yeah,
been
yeah.
there. I was just there.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
because it's because we went on a autumn vacation to Zeeuws-Vlaanderen, and
Ah,
then you basically pass Terneuzen if
yeah,
you
and
if
that's
you.
the best thing what you can do with it. Sorry for
I
all
know,
those who are living in Terneuzen.
I know, it's just like yeah,
But there was one big advantage over there, and that was I was into sailing a lot, and I
wow, yeah,
sailed and surfed and did all kinds of stuff on the water.
hmm
And this is probably one of those other moments in my life that I discovered I'm a designer, because I really could see after some time which, let's say, which sailing vessels, I don't know what to write, which boats were fast and would be nice to sail with if I just took a look at them on the shore. I could see already from the lines,
ah,
like, and what I really like about ships is that sailing boats is that when they're beautiful, they're very often are also great to sail. You can actually there's something magical about it, and you see that with cars as well a little bit, and planes and stuff like that. I'm now just talking as a product
yeah, yeah,
designer,
yeah,
but there is, we can see some aesthetics in things that are functional,
uh-huh.
but not in the classic form follows function, which is very boring.
hmm
It's a sailing vessel is a perfect example of how something can be really nicely shaped, really nicely curved. You can take your eyes around it. You can take a look at one of those lines, and you can see that it's almost perfect. And then those boats, they will sail splendidly. And that's one of those things that intrigue me. Can I create those kind of things that look so nice and are so functional? And this is how I started as a product designer. But that was before the empathy part and stuff like that.
All right. It reminds me a little bit of which is yeah, it's a kind of a different topic, I'm afraid, but it does remind me of this. There's a film called I think it's called The Beautiful Equation, and it's a film, a documentary about someone who wants to discover whether if an equation, if it's if that can be beautiful, or if it's only functions just numbers, and so there's all these famous scientists that they interview, and all of them say if it's not beautiful, it's probably not right.
Yeah.
so so
Yeah.
and for me that was like my brain went like
Yeah.
so they talk about aesthetics in an equation, and you can tell because it's beautiful it is
Do
actually right. And
you
so
know
it's
the
kind of
word
amazing.
Occam's razor?
No.
Occam's razor. That's in science
Mhm.
a saying for that. If you have 10 equations that explain something,
Uh-huh.
pick the most elegant.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Oh, there's a word for that. Well, no,
Yeah,
but to
it's
me,
Occam's
so
razor.
so I am a school dropout, and because of my dyslexia and all that. So for me, those moments, and I love learning, by the way. So that's not it's not a learning disability, but I love learning. But for me, those were moments where my brain went like boom, like so aesthetics and beauty and emotion. Even though these people who seem to be so extremely rational, but they're not. They're extremely emotional. It is also about beauty and about elegance and about. So to your point, you can look at a very functional. There's a boat and it's functional, and you put some signs on it. You say, well, this is how water kind of flows, and it is how So this, but actually, it also creates beauty.
Yeah, yeah. You can actually
and
take a look at it and think, wow, this is just perfect. This curve, and the more experienced
yeah,
you are, you better you can see it. That's kind of weird, but there is this relation, and I
yeah.
really like it.
So is that because, and I'm just making this up as I go along, but is this because we are more part of nature than we like to kind of admit, because we are nature, and because we are if we can be in tune with nature, we can maybe, so to your point with the boat, we know what we feel water, we know how that feels, we know nature, we know what wind feels like, we know what it is. And so if you're more in tune with sort of with your surroundings, and you're more observant, and you're more in tune with your emotional side, you will be able to kind of understand more about what works and what doesn't work, and what fits and what doesn't fit, or what is an intervention, because you can also say, well, I'm going to do something which is like the opposite. I'm going to make like this weird shaped boat that we know it doesn't sail, but it's so ugly that it's kind of interesting again, because it's like an intervention into the system, right? Because I sometimes like those things, like, because I know there's like you have these cars, like these old Volvos, for instance, they're like a kit car draws a car, but they're so, like, that they're going to use a lot of gas, because they're so, because
Yeah,
it's just,
but they survive anything. That's how they look like.
yeah, again, right. So there's, yeah, anyway, is there something like that, you think, that you kind
Well,
of,
I would not just say nature. I would reframe it a little bit,
mhm,
and I would say I don't know if you know the word tacit knowledge, but there's
mhm,
this.
mhm,
It's one
yeah,
of my favorite books in the book shelf behind me.
mhm,
Is from Polanyi. That's a philosopher from the 60s, and he said, "We know more than we can say."
yes,
And the thing is, there is much of the things that we feel and think that is basically embodied. And the most simple example I always give to students as well, as I ask them, how is it possible that you don't drop off from your bike? And they can't articulate it. I give them 10 minutes, I give them 50 minutes, and still
exactly,
they're guessing why they're not dropping
yeah,
off their bikes all the time.
exactly, yeah,
And then I say, just imagine, just sit here on this chair. Okay, get away from your desk. Just sit on the chair. Imagine you're on a bike. Put your hands right now on this imaginary bike. Okay, you're there, and they're doing it. And I say, okay, now you tend to drop to the left side. What is it? What you're doing? And then they're looking at their own hands, at
uh-huh,
their own body,
uh-huh.
and they see what they're actually doing. They're suddenly steering
Yeah,
automatically
yeah, yeah,
to the
yeah,
left.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And then I start to explain. And this is what I say: the body in this case knows
yeah,
more
yeah,
than what we can say.
yeah,
And with these ships and vessels and cars, that's a little bit the same. Yes, we experience the world
yeah,
continuously.
yeah,
And we're only, I think, only 5% of it we can make sense of and verbalize.
yes,
And the other 95%, there's so much wisdom in there and stuff in there that we can actually use. And yeah, if you dare to access it, dare to use your intuition, yeah, then you
yeah.
can become a really nice creative designer.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a really important point, because what you're saying, the language, the words we have, are often actually in our way. If we say it has to be verbalized, if you can't explain it, then it doesn't mean anything, or it doesn't exist. Exactly to your point, that sometimes we just don't have the words for it, but it doesn't mean it's not there. It doesn't mean it's not important, but you can't
Or
describe
without.
it. Yeah, and so I like the embodiment, and I think there's a whole, and I've been kind of, so there's a book about this, and it's called A Man Without Words, by Susan Scheller. And A Man Without Words, well, it's not exactly about this, but it kind of touches on this topic of language, because and the limitations of language, because it's a book about Susan, who meets a boy, and she teaches sign language, but he doesn't know sign language, and she's going to teach him sign language, but she discovers that he doesn't have any knowledge of words. And so how do you, and he's deaf, and so how do you teach someone words when you don't know words? And just that thought for me was like, how can you imagine you having no words? No words.
And still, and still communicate with each other.
Yeah, and they communicated. So he had sort of friends, a group of people who had the same situation and the same condition, and so they would kind of act things out when they wanted to share things. And so in the end, she actually taught him sign language. But one of the key things was that when they asked him, "What were you thinking before you had the words, before you knew language?" He said, "I wasn't." It's like,
yeah, but actually he was, but not,
yeah, no,
but not in a way that he knows now.
Exactly, he experienced it. And there's a TED talk. It's called "A Stroke of Insight," I think, and this is about someone who gets a stroke, a doctor, and her language kind of center gets hit, and it's an amazing talk because it's about language disappearing and how then all of a sudden the world kind of just unfiltered comes in. And she says, like, it's like being on drugs. It's like amazing. She was like, whoa, this is so cool. It's I
can add a very personal touch to that, because I had a stroke, a couple of them, and I lost sight. And I got partly sight back. But what I really like about this experience, this sounds odd, because I'm still partly blind. I'm missing 30% of my vision in the middle, so that's quite hard in the beginning. But what I learned and what I liked is that I could, for some time, observe my own sight, because I could see what my brain was making from the part that was missing. Because it's not that when you miss some part of it, I'm literally missing an area in my view, because it's in the brain. The eyes are perfect. It's just that the image is no longer composed completely.
Exactly.
So I'm missing a part. But the funny thing is, I could see for some time what my brains would make out of it, because there is no black hole. You can't see a black hole. It's just they give some meaning to it. They fill it in. And it was really funny in the beginning, because for instance, someone entered the door and my room, and he came to me, and I was giving him a hand, and he was like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I thought you were giving me a hand," because from something in the context, my mind.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw him giving me a hand, so I gave him my hand, but he was not actually giving his hand. So, and what I learned is that it took me 2 years, and not like exactly, but very slowly, what my mind is predicting the missing parts are
exactly
is getting better and better. And nowadays, 99% out of the 100 cases, I do exactly what is needed. But still, it's possible that suddenly in that area something is missing, is standing, and then I just tip it over, like if it's not there.
But what you're experiencing then is like something I only read about, is because when we work in design, and often what we do is behavioral change, really, and specifically we want to kind of have people think, when we say think outside of the box, for instance, or if we want people to do research and observe, and we want them to get rid of their blind spots. And because your blind spot is basically your brain kind of predicting what will happen, and that's what you'll see. And the other things is just kind of filtered out. And it's like when you're in the room and and this is, I just read about this stuff, obviously. You're in a room, and the room really well, because it's your room, you've been there, your brain basically switches off. You don't see it anymore.
No.
And that is such important, because it's sort of that spotlight, as they call that. You have your spotlight, and how then do you get rid of that? How do you then step out of that? How do you say, wait, I have to switch off my spotlights? So there's all these, and I was speaking about this at a course I gave, and there was a participant, and he had been in the military, and he said when he was on guard, and he was as a soldier, he's been in Afghanistan, and they had to be guarding the base. and for hours and hours. And they really had to have all these tricks to kind of to make, because they literally their brain would just switch off. And was there a tree there? I don't know. Was there so they had all these games to kind of make sure that they kept them their brain kind of switched on, really. But in design and in research and seeing outside of the box, and that is such an amazing thing. So it's almost like, so I can understand why you're saying that it's actually really interesting that it happened to you. I'm pretty sure that, and in a way, if you look,
I would not recommend it.
You're like, yeah, don't do that. That's awesome.
No.
Yeah.
Don't try to blind yourself. Just for the experience.
Don't do this at home, kids. Don't do this at home.
But in a way, what you're saying is, what I understand is, this is something that designers or design researchers should try to learn in a way. That's how can I look beyond my own, in my terms, frame. And so I have a frame with how I look at the world, and that's the spotlight, what you say. Yeah. And actually, I need to see more. And what I only can say is that there are two tricks. If I can give recommendations, the first one we just discussed, becoming aware of it. That's on the very moment that you're aware that you're looking at a specific way to whatever is in front of you, that you just. Why do I see? Why do I look at you right now? And am I looking most of all at the R and an A at the back? I don't know why. That the listeners can't see it, but he has some text behind it. But I'm still wondering what R and A means. So that's I don't know. But probably there's an A and an. And no, I don't know. I really don't know. What's over there? It's just an A and an R. Okay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But you're looking at that and you're wondering, and that's exactly. Yeah, because you try to put meaning to it. Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is, becoming aware of that, you take a look at it. That's the most important thing, because that it gives you a choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
To also say, okay, maybe I can look at it differently. And to make it very simple in psychological terms, if I do an interview with someone, I can of course listen to him because have some list of interview questions and stuff like that, or I can just put down the interview questions and start listening to what he is saying, and whatever he comes up with, what happens actually with you and me right now as well, we're just going to take that and we're going to listen to that and articulate that, because that's the only way to reframe whatever is in your mind, that you're going to listen to the other.
Right.
That's one way, and the other one is and this is a bit philosophical, so I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. But I'm heavily influenced by pragmatism. The American John Dewey, Charles Peirce, and one of them, William James, actually, and he started in a way psychology as well. But he's always saying that we experience a stream of consciousness. So things are just going through us, and what we do as a human being. Probably animals as well, by the way, but let's say as a human being, is that those we observe and see those things that are relevant for our well-being right now. So if I'm hungry, if I'm walking through a street and I'm hungry, I see different things than when I need to go somewhere fast and I'm just trying to find a way to get somewhere faster, even than I'm biking right now. So dependent on what is my concerns and what my well-being, I see the worlds differently.
Well, that's the spotlight I mentioned. So that's what I said about. So if you are looking for a book on one of your shelves, and you think your book has a green cover, but it actually has a blue cover, you're not going to find it because you can't see it because you're looking for green. So your spotlight says green. And then this is where you kind of you don't see your car keys, or you don't see your whatever, because you're looking for something different and your brain doesn't see it. So that's sort of so it's similar. If you, for instance, I always it's like if I for instance I don't know, if you have for instance, if you buy a car and you think it's a car you've never seen, nobody has that car and in that color. And once you buy it, you see it everywhere. Like,
yeah, okay. You start seeing that exactly.
right. So
But
it's like,
we can also reverse it, Arne.
yeah.
Yeah, and if I still use the same pragmatism as a lead, what they say, and I really like this metaphor because it's so simple. They say you have a mind which is in the background, observing everything, and you have a consciousness which is in the foreground, which puts the focus on something. And what happens is every now and then your mind will say, "Hey, consciousness, wake up! There's something important." And this sounds really weird, but just imagine that you're driving in your car, your blue car you just bought, the new one that you start to see everywhere, and you're driving through a neighborhood, and you don't see people, and you're just driving there, and you're talking on the phone with your wife, and blah 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 blah, and you're driving a bit too fast, and suddenly a ball bumps, bong. Bunk in front of you in the road. Yes. Now something happens because immediately you will stop talking to your wife.
Yeah.
Immediately you will scan for what's going on around you.
Yeah.
And what will you scan for, Anna?
Kids,
exactly. So the first thing is there a kid? Because there's a possibility, it's a hypothesis, that a kid will run on the road and trying to get the ball.
Yes.
Right in front of your car.
Exactly.
So the first thing you do is you're going to slow down. Yes. Where are the kids? Where are the kids?
Yeah.
Now, what happens is your mind took control and says to your conscious, you need to deal with it right now. Whatever happens.
Yeah.
Now, and why I like this story so much, I wrote a paper on it once for teams, is surprises, like the ball, are the benefits, because those are the moments that we get new framings, new ways of looking. Suddenly I'm ripped out of my entire normal ways of thinking because of a surprise, and I have to reconsider what is it that we're doing, where are we going, and stuff like that. Now, if you want to be creative, organize for surprises.
Yes.
Exactly. Make sure that things happen that you will not expect, and suddenly you become a very creative person.
Yeah, but that's very scary.
Do you have surprises?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes you very, because then you don't know what's going to happen. A surprise is something that is unexpected, and you don't know what the outcome will be. So
you amaze me, Arne, right now.
No.
Because I tell this story more often, and what I noticed is, if I explaining this to managers, they say this is scary.
Yes.
If I say this to young people, they say we love surprises.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Yeah. But I'm speaking the mind of sort of my sort of the group of people that we try to convince that this is actually so important, and this is what they'll say. They'll say, "No surprises, please. I want to be in control."
You can't plan for surprises.
Right. So I'm with you. I call those things interventions into because I like that, because it kind of, I always say, throw a little pebble into the lake, a little stone into the lake, and see what happens. And you don't know what comes back, but I like that because it's not about the stone I designed, because it's about the feedback I get, and then I can design another one, and then I can design another one, and that's a creative process I like. But it's not always something you're allowed to do in a business environment, because people want to be in control, or at least they want to pretend that they are in control, because they're really not. But they want to pretend that they are in control by the language they use, by sort of the way they guard sort of their processes and their protocols and all the like. And if then you say, let's organize the prizes, and they're like, no. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with those? Because I know you've experienced the corporate world, and in the academic world. But how do you convince people?
Oh, you don't have to convince them. And why I'm saying this is in different stages. Let me put it like that. So if I'm always talking about innovation, about doing new things and implementing them successfully. And in specific stages, you have to organize for being resilient to whatever happens. What you're saying, your stone. That's you have to do interventions to learn. By the way, my shortest definition of this design thinking is learning by creating.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're just saying is I'm learning by doing interventions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's
the same thing.
Yeah. And by the way, another one of my real all-time heroes intellectually is Kurt Lewin, an American philosopher and action researcher. And he always said, if you want to understand the system, try to change it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only way.
Yeah. Well, that's part of a sort of complexity theory, right? So if a system is too complex or chaotic, you have to create an intervention. Otherwise, you can't analyze it.
You can't analyze your way out.
No, if it's simple, you can sit and analyze it and map it out, and you can understand it. But we live in highly complex systems that are evolving at the same time, that you cannot analyze that. And no matter how much data you have, you cannot analyze it once you've done. And if you do, once you're ready, it's changed anyway.
Yeah. You're 30 years.
Right.
That's a little bit what happens with climate change right now. I'm a little bit afraid. After 30 years, we kind of have the right models. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Really, I mean, we have the model,
exactly.
but no solution.
This is what we should have done. We found it. We found the solution we should have had like 10 years ago. Oh, exactly. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No, exactly. So it's that I think there is a more. I think it's also an evolution of our understanding, and also because things are changing, also because of all the crises that we have, like climate change, but also because of new developments around technology. And there's so many things that are so complex. And I was reading the book *Sapiens*, and it's and in the book there's a chapter about the scientific revolution and how it was started by the simple acknowledgement that we don't know everything that is important, and what we know might be wrong. And before that time, before we started thinking that way, we just simply said everything that is important is in that book. It's in the Bible, or it's in some king's head, or some kind of ruler, and that's everything that is important. Those are the laws that our king made or the God made or whatever. And then all of a sudden we said, well, actually, there are other things that are important we don't know. And we should find out, or what we know might be wrong. So we kind of should keep testing the things that we do. And that sparked the scientific revolution that basically created the world as we know it, for good or bad, but still. But this idea of, we might be wrong, and it's not about we're going to analyze everything and now we know everything and then we're done. No. It's a continuous loop, a continuous iteration, and which somehow we forgot, or somehow. So, as an example, I've been working with this big German company. And I mentioned this one because they had this wonderful name for their innovation departments and the people who were doing the innovation labs and all that. They call them their submarines because, if they had to kind of be hidden, it was really important, because otherwise the business would say they're just burning money. They don't know what they're doing because they're experimenting and they're failing and they're trying, and there's trial and error. That's how you learn. And then if you think about how the business was started, like every other business, probably every other business started from entrepreneurial spirit, from tinkering, from trial and error. That's what they're selling. Basically, that's what their success was about. But then they kind of grew this whole kind of enormous giant of a company around it, and they forgot. And you have to I'm literally reteaching people that work. So that came from, I worked for a lot of healthcare industry companies, and people who worked in the laboratory doing tests now move into management. And then I have to tell them, so how did you develop things when you were doing work in the lab? Right? When you tested something and you did a clinical trial, and it didn't work, and or someone got ill or something didn't go, or the mice died or something, did someone get fired? No, of course not. That was interesting data. Right. So how come now you're, in management position, you totally forgot that's how you learn things? Why is that? And it's because of incentives and KPIs and the likes.
Yeah, but also on it's you need both worlds. And why I'm saying this is I kind of like those kind of people as well, who are really like this is the strategy and this is how we're gonna do it and stuff like that.
Okay.
I'm totally not one of them. But I started to appreciate.
Tell me, convince me.
Well, convince you. Okay. Okay. Well, I always start anecdotal, and this was I really liked it. I was I think 28 or something like that. Still very young, dear listeners, because now I'm an old guy. No, but I was talking to a director of an R&D, my own R&D. And what he said is we had some problems, and the kind of problems you're talking about. We had some surprises out there. Some machine went up in flames, and what happened over there? Because it didn't happen in the United States, but if it would have happened in the United States, you would have a claim that would be like $1 million and stuff like that. Fortunately, it was just in the Netherlands, so it's more like, oh, ships. But but then he said something to me, which I think is crucial. He said, the people who are working on innovation, on finding new things, approaches, those are different people, different mindsets, different processes, and those people who are just trying to run the fabric, not the fabric, the manufacturing. And this is a manufacturing problem. So we need different people than you. Sorry, Guido. But if we send you over, you're going to have a talk with them, and you're going to discover all kinds of nice things. And this customer is really nice. And, you know what we can do with these burning things? Actually, I got a brilliant idea with it. No, sorry, Guido, you're not going there. We send someone over with a different mindset. Now, why I'm saying this is what I learned from him. Nowadays, we have a very nice scientific word for it. It's called ambidextrous organizations. Organizations that can both run efficiently a manufacturing and a service organization and stuff like that. Like the government should be able to do. And we have a part of the organization that can fail and try and stuff like that. And these things need to be a little bit separated from each other. But to be honest, if you would send me in for doing something which is very about efficiency and getting 100 people as fast as possible, their passports inside when they're applying for a passport and stuff like that, and we have to do it very efficiently and stuff like that, I'm not the right guy. I'm not the right guy. I can think about it once, how to do it better.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, exactly. But on a Thursday next week, and we have another team with new people on it, how can we deal with that from the people who are offering the services? You need different kind of people.
Yeah, but okay. So all right. So okay, I'll grant you that one. Well, however, do you feel that balance between those two groups of people isn't often kind of leaning towards the more structured, more linear kind of people? And that I'm not really sure if it's about being more creative or not less structured, but it's more about there's maybe more a balance of people who say, yeah, but what are we actually doing? Why are we doing this? And what's the point? And who are we doing it for? Because I sometimes feel that the people who run the business in a very good way, and and they have their kind of their talents there, so often kind of forget that there is more than just running a business, and there is more than just kind of selling your product. There's also, why are you selling that product, or shouldn't you be? So, for instance, there's I don't know the number here in Europe or in the Netherlands, but I I was reading this article about the US where they did research on the happiness of employees. And I think it was about 90% of people in corporations are unhappy in their job. Now, to me, there's like, yes, so you can be really efficient and really good at what you're doing in that business side. But if everyone's unhappy, there's something going wrong. I am not saying that. I mean, I don't want to go to this idea that we have to kind of build an utopia. I mean, I wish we could. I don't think it's possible. We're human beings. We are faulty. It's complex. Sure, I don't know, but there's something in my gut saying there is a bigger need than ever to create meaningful business. And I'm saying that because I think that a lot of people and that it's not just young people, it's people like me and like you who feel drawn to doing meaningful things. So if you have a talent in your company, nowadays, HR companies struggle with keeping talent, retaining them for your company because, they rather work for a startup because it feels more meaningful to them, either for their career because it's nicer, because they're happier, or they go to a company that has a sort of purpose. I don't know. I'm not sure if you feel the same, but it might. I've been feeling that for a long time, and this is, I think, why things like design thinking and that kind of agile thinking is on the rise. Is there is something broken? There is something broken, and I don't know what that is. I don't know. It's because it's highly complex. But I think that there is something broken, and we somehow have to play a part, we as human beings, not just us as creatives, as people out there, to kind of somehow fix it or nudge it or show sort of a path forward. And I don't know. What's your feeling about that?
Well, anyway, I recognize very much what you're saying. And I think we're right in the middle of a tidal wave of and it's not just design thinking. So there's purpose economy and the donut economy. There are all these kind of things that are in a way with pointing the same direction. So we need to revamp our paradigms of how we think and what we think is most important and stuff like that. Yeah. And If I use the example you used yourself before, you were talking about the book Sapiens. You said something about science. That was a major paradigm change. That rather than saying whatever who's in control is right, to saying I doubt everything because I'm not sure about it until I can prove it. That was a paradigm change. Now the paradigm change. This is a very personal stance what I'm saying right now, but we have. Right now, we're in the middle of a paradigm which sorry for that, is called capitalism, which is basically about efficiency, about making money and stuff like that. And it's an excellent system. However, with every paradigm, there's always a drawback. There's always a pitfall and stuff like that. So we're all looking for changing it, adapting it, maybe going to a new one. But at the same time, Arne, I'm also aware that, for instance, the paradigm you and I are advocating all the time, design thinking, being more creative. Yes, we have our own pitfalls as well. So, of course, and why I'm saying this is, on the very moment that you make one paradigm, one way of looking dominant inside a company, we all have to be very in KPIs and stuff like that. It's killing you. If you have an entire company just doing design thinking all the time, they will go bankrupt anyway as well within a year. So, and the thing is, what I really like, and this is what I would like to tell the world, is together with these different paradigms and respecting each other's paradigms and understanding which one is needed when.
Yes.
Then we can come a long way. On the moment we say the linear approach is better than all the others, then that's what we have right now. Then we're going wrong, and I'm saying the same for the creative paradigm.
Yeah. Well, I could counter it by saying that is what design thinking to me is. It is about diversity. That's the whole thing. It's about curiosity and being open to other languages and being able to collaborate. It is exactly, we need to have diversity of thought, and so not just one, but many. And I think diversity is missing at the moment. Diversity of thought, and I think that's the key. And it's not design thinking, by the way. I know I'm part of this design thinking community movement and sort of. It's not, to me, it's absolutely not a religion. It's just a word, but it meant that it helped me stay close to what was changing. And I called my company Design Thinkers by chance, because nobody was talking about it at the time, because this is like 15 years ago. But it did help me stay close to change. And maybe now it's the time to let go of that. I feel that, because it becomes more of a dominant force. And to your point, I always said, once we have once we finalize the sentence, design thinking is, and we agree on that, it's dead.
I remember that you and I were together in Milan in 2009, for those who were not there, of course, but there was one speaker, if I remember well, and he actually said, on the moment that we can all agree on a definition of design, it's dead.
It's dead. Exactly.
It's dead.
Yeah.
It's the discussion, and it's the same for design thinking. On the moment that we all agree this is design thinking, then it's dead. It's gone and over.
Yeah, go. Yeah, exactly. And I believe in that. And it's because it's the conversation. It's an ongoing conversation. It's discussion, because then it kills it, and then it becomes static. And once it's static, it dies. That's basically, that's evolution. That's how it works. Then the ecosystem around it is just not vital anymore. And
but in a way, because I was talking about pitfalls, and there is also a pitfall in what we call design thinking, and one of those things, when the discussion is gone and we're just saying this is it and this is how you should do it. What I observe right now, to be honest, there's a high burnout risk in design thinking. When people for the first time in companies do it the creative way, the design thinking way, and you stay with them, and I do, and you stay with them for a long time, what will happen is many of them will have burnout. And there are very serious risks and good reasons
why is that? Why is that?
Because what you just say, diversity, that's a nice word that we all kind of love. But it also implies ambiguity. And ambiguity is that we see the same things, but we totally disagree. That's what ambiguity is about. So, I would just say, take a look at what's happening right now in the United States with the elections, and you can see what you can put anything on the table. You see totally different perspectives on it.
Exactly.
If you accept that, as a creative, that's very normal. For people who are not used to that and who like to have things clear and want to understand what the standards are, what is expected of them, so they don't. So most people feel much more confident when ambiguity is reduced. And if you can't deal with ambiguity, you're having a hard time with innovation and design thinking. Yeah,
exactly. So this is why we have these models saying. Design thinking here, it's 4 steps. No, it's 6 steps. So you go through these 6 steps. It starts at and you can put it in a box. And
you can't go back because we passed that already.
Yeah.
Well, actually, going back is basically it. No, we passed it.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah. When is it done? Never. Oh God. It's living in beta. Like, oh God. It sounds really cool, but. Yeah, no, I totally recognize what you're saying, what I would like to kind of add to it, from my perspective, is that we are just at the start, and somehow we feel as and it's what we have been taught, I think, in our businesses, in our schools, or in our cultures. I don't know exactly where it comes from, but is that. We are short-term thinking people, especially in the West, and also in the East nowadays, by the way. But it's that capitalism, I think, is part of that. Is that I want my success in my lifetime, and I want to experience it as quick as possible. And I want to be, if you're not successful when you're 30, in your 30s or 40s, that's really sad, because that's basically what you want and expect. I don't feel it as successful if I create something for the next generation that they might have the success, or generations later. So it's from this idea of, um, if I have a family business, for instance, like many German companies are, you have a different way of thinking. You think about next generations, or if you and traditional, or more like traditional Asian philosophy, and some Japanese companies have like a vision for the next 100 years. We can't imagine it. First, it's like, no, I want my success now. And I do feel sometimes also, because we are all part of that kind of drive, in that if we started with this service design and design thinking, and then there's UX and the whole thing. But I want to see sort of results now. I want to be able to change those corporates. I want to see that change. I want to see my. But at the same time, I also feel, no, we're at the start. This is the start, and we should think about, what do we leave, and how do we educate next generation, and what do we give the next generation so they can continue our kind of journey. And I think I'm really interested in that kind of thinking of what can I do, so instead of me wanting to have a success, and I want to have this company go through this transition, and I want to see the world change, and what can I now build for the next generation that they can actually build on that, and they leave it to the next generation. So it's this short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. And I think we need that, because I think that is more meaningful. But but it's also, in a way, telling me that we have to let go of certain things, that we can also sometimes slow down a little bit and say, hey. So the back of your mind, it might be telling you this already, but sometimes you have to kind of stop doing things. We don't have language for it. We don't have mind wandering is the only word I can come up with that is sort of positive, in the sense of, otherwise it's just being lazy or procrastination, or doing nothing. But actually doing nothing and observing and seeing things, seeing patterns, and understanding the consequences of what you do long term, instead of just keep running and keep running and keep running and keep running, because I need to have my quarterly figures, or I need to, I don't, whatever. We're always running, and there's a contradiction in that we kind of feel that we always have to keep moving, because that's change, and you can never stand still. And at the same time, I feel that we need to kind of slow down, calm down, stop doing stuff all the time. It's okay. Your brain keeps working. It won't stop still. It don't stand still. You can't even get it to shut up. It will keep working. But if you don't stop, you're not listening to it. You're not listening to your gut feel. And we're going to come back to that tacit knowledge again. You don't listen to your tacit knowledge. You know so much more, but you have to sometimes just stop.
But now here's the paradoxical situation,
Mm-hmm.
and I know you paint a lot, and draw a lot, correct?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So in a way, you organized yourself to do it slowly, to take a good look at what's happening in front of you, and to observe. And I know you from a long time ago that you were quite observant as well. So that's basically a bit what I recognize. So this makes perfect sense for you, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now the paradox, what I see in the topic we're discussing, design thinking, right now, is that its promise, and how it's very often used, is design sprints and scrumming and agile and running, quick solutions.
Yeah, exactly.
And why I named this a paradox is because if you really go back to where design thinking and the ideas arose from what they observed, they say it's a process of doing things and reflecting on them.
Exactly.
Creating and thinking.
Yes.
doing nothing, basically. So
Yes.
do something and stop
Yes.
and listen.
Because without reflection, you can't learn.
Yeah, and what happened? That's my interpretation. In a way, especially with this design sprints, this was the first time I started noticing that we had too many burnouts in design thinking kind of schemes.
Right. Yeah.
It was always in design sprints.
Yeah. Yeah.
People,
of course.
but they did the first 6 weeks, they did the second 6 weeks, and then at the third period they were like, "Damn, do we have to do it all again? I need a holiday. No, we got a planning right now. We're going with whatever." But the thing is, I always say you go from A to B according to the laws of B. And what happens if I put it like this? The laws of A are efficiency and speed up and doing it for the lowest cost possible. The laws of B are the creative laws, which implies failing, not doing things. Take some time to draw a tree. I don't know why. I just feel I have to draw a tree. But at the end of drawing a tree, I got this magnificent idea. I don't know where it came from, but it happened. Yeah. That's the laws of B. But what happened right now is that design thinking, in many ways, in many cases, and in many trainings as well, sorry to say that, for those who are into training of design thinking, is basically done alongside the paradigm A. So yes, we like design thinking when it speeds up things, when we don't stop, when we do it faster than ever, and there's got to be solutions, whatever happens.
So if we go back to Star Trek.
Sorry.
Go back to Star Trek.
Yeah.
Because to me, what you're saying is in Star Trek you have, and for people who don't know Star Trek, because I noticed that because I shared this thought before, and people are like, I don't know Star Trek. I'm like, you don't know Star Trek? Anyway, there is this basically, if you're redesigning ships, the Borg. Remember the Borg? I mean, they travel in a cubicle. Talk about spaceship design. They have the cubicle, the box, and they assimilate everything that is not like them. So so to me, the company, the industries, the corporates, they are the Borg, and then something new comes and says we have to do things differently, and they say, yeah, you come on in, and then you'll be assimilated, and then I go like, bing, and you get this chip in your head, and you go, boom, and you become half Borg, and then you're assimilated, and you're fit into the box. I don't know if they meant it that way. But I think it's not a coincidence that it's a cubicle. It's literally a box, and you get put back into the box again. I don't know if that's true, but that's how I always feel. And there's a book called you probably know, because quite an old book already. I think it's called "Orbiting the Giant Hairball," and it's the idea of that the company is the hairball. And if you are in innovation, so back to the idea of the balance between innovation departments and sort of the business, is that you have to orbit it, but if you're too close, you get sucked into the hairball, but if you're too far away, you get slung into the universe and get lost as well. So you have to kind of orbit it like just far away enough.
I really like this metaphor. Because this is what I personally experience as one of the most difficult parts.
Mm-hmm.
If you get too close, you get a lot of attention, but you get burned.
Yeah.
Because they want to have results right now, and let's start with it. Yeah. And if you're too far out and you're doing great things, and probably you would say, I really like it what you're doing, then you don't get funded anymore, because the company's like, this guy is gone.
Yeah,
he's really gone.
He's in outer space somewhere.
Yeah, he's somewhere out. He's literally out of space right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
In a way, this is a little bit a difficult balance, because I always say this is a balance like a knife on its side.
Mm-hmm.
You can balance it, but it tips over immediately with the very first vibration or little dust dropping down, whatever, it will drop over. And that's making it so hard.
So, so when you were observing those sail ships, so those boats, and then you decided you wanted to be a designer, because I don't think you, as a child, you didn't call it being a designer. But because you went to design school. So which school did you go to?
Technical University of Delft.
Yes,
Industrial
I
design.
think the most famous one here from the Netherlands, at least to me, to my knowledge, that's where all the smart people come from.
Well, I live nowadays in Eindhoven, so and there are very few educations in Eindhoven. So if I just say yes right now, then I can't live here anymore. It's one of those great institutions.
It's one of those great institutions. Yeah. Well, now for me, if I would hire someone and I don't care about their resumes at all. I care about who they are at the moment and what kind of people they are. But if it says Technical University Delft, there's always a little light bulb goes like, hey, that's interesting, because they learn how to think in a very different way that fits really well with what we do. So I'm really, if I didn't go to that school because I'm a school dropout, as I mentioned, but I went to, I taught a class once at the school in Delft. And I remember walking in for one of the first times and I thought, if they would have had this kind of school when I was a kid, the way it was at that time, and at that time they had all the machines out in the main hall, and so they changed that. But at that time it was all there, it was all visual, and I thought, whoa, I would have loved to go to this.
Acre sculpture.
Yeah, it's like amazing. Yeah. Anyway, but you went there, and how is that where you kind of discovered, or why did you go there? Why did you decide to go there? What was the draw? You said, yes, I'm going to be
I can make a very poetic and nice philosophical thing, but actually it was quite straightforward. Mm-hmm. I didn't go there at first.
Okay.
I studied maritime technologies. I wanted to become a designer of boats.
Yes. Yes,
and they had these great kind of basins where they have these American Cup kind of races they were pulling through on the open day, and I was like, this is my life. This is where I want to be. This is exactly what I'm dreaming of. So I went there, and then we did a lot of math, we did a lot of mechanics, and we did a lot of physics, but we didn't do any designing, and I never saw those boats again after 1 year. So I got my first year. Proper Duits on Dutch, and I was like, I went to a professor, and I've always, quite opposite to you. I'm not a high school dropout. I'm more the kind of guy who's always trying to get great grades and stuff like that.
No, don't be sorry.
No, it's just yeah. So I finished my first year in June, and I was like, I went to a professor. And I asked him, when will I start doing design? Because I didn't like my first year, to be honest. And I really liked him. He said, you won't. He said, to be honest, that was a little bit part of and maybe one of you, of all those people who are now in the first year, one of you maybe will become a designer, but all the others will become engineers.
Right.
So that's what was happened. And at the same time, there was this School of Industrial Design in Delft, and they had exactly what you said. They had this hallway basically filled with machines and devices and stuff like that. Fantastic. That was one thing. And there was another thing which was really interesting to me, which I didn't understand. Because I was spending, I would say, 10 hours of studying and 40 hours of having fun. And they were having 40 hours of working damn hard and 10 hours of having fun. And for some reason, I was like, that sounds like a real proper study to me.
Right.
Because rather than just studying books, they were making things. This is something I can explain right now in hindsight, and that takes much more time, guys. It's much easier to learn from a book, I always say, than trying to write your own one, which basically is designing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was attracted to that, so I just moved on. I didn't know what industrial design was, but at least they're making things. At least that was a good thing. And then I discovered that what I liked is that they put people centerpiece. It's very human centered. So I learned product design. And from then on, I learned many more things: interaction design, interface design, service design, and so on. Not just on the school, but later in my career. And I moved back because when I started with it, but I still have the same feeling, is that their idea of how innovation works is rather technocratic. Is rather rational. So that's the downside for all those who think like, I want to study there.
Yeah.
It is, design thinking the way engineers think design thinking is about.
Yeah.
Yes, people are most important, so we put them central. We're going to study them.
Yeah.
What I'm missing right now a bit, and probably you as a school dropout did that much more than I did, is what I call artistic research. Just make things in order to learn, to see, and that's something you don't learn in Delft.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So, but
anyway, long story.
Yeah, no. I think it's I think it's important because this is where we teach new generations, how to think in a way. You're being brainwashed, right? So you're being programmed. Your brain's going to be kind of like, because I can tell when people have done Delft. I mean, it's not like I can do blind tests, like talk to me for 5 minutes and I know which school you went to, but I can tell in the way they think, and it has an amazing benefit because they are really good critical thinkers, and they are people. So just one last anecdote about Delft is that I've been teaching a lot of schools, and and I usually like a guest lecturer, and most of the time I do a lecture, and then I say, okay, any questions? And no questions. The students are like, yeah, whatever, maybe one or two. In Delft, before I started talking, they had questions, and they went like, can I ask you a question? I'm like, what's going on? Like, what? Oh, this is awesome.
Can I open my presentation first before you start asking questions? Yeah.
So I love that. I love it was a different, very different way of, also because it's an international school, and people kind of are there to really get the most out of the school, and then maybe it has something to do with the work they do, they work hard. But I like that. I like it.
Yeah, I like it as well. But I genuinely believe, and to be honest, I'm back as a professor of applied science right now in another school in Holland, in Amsterdam.
Mm-hmm.
And we're working closely together with other professors. Mm-hmm. I really believe that we need a new kind of design thinking education. Mm-hmm. And which is not, we can learn a lot from Delft, but there are some things missing. And we are really redevising what education should look like for developing design thinkers for 2026, something like that.
And so what should it look like?
Well, one of the most important things is we were talking before about different frames, different perspectives. Mm-hmm. Well, the implication is in education that they need to work multidisciplinary. So you need to put people in, young people who mm-hmm. did 2 years of software coding and stuff like that, together with people who worked on on nursing and stuff like that, together with people who are into creative business, together with people who are working on mechanics and stuff like that. Right. They have to come together in a team. Mm-hmm. Then they discover something really weird. These people are nuts. They think very, very strange, and then discover that actually together they can come up with ideas that are really, really, really nice. Sometimes great solutions. Sometimes it's a total fail. It doesn't matter, but they have to learn that they are having different frames, different perspective, different knowledge, and
right.
And that's one of the first things that I think is really important. And the second thing is this. Well, and this is basically design thinking, but in the Netherlands, beyond design education, there are many schools right now who say we need to have design-based education, also for physiotherapists, like that. Right. So, yes. So this is much wider than just design education. For instance, Stenden Hogeschool is completely changed everything. They say every course we do is design-based, design thinking-based. And we're not that far in Holland, but we're going there as well. What we say is every professional, regardless whether he's studying physiotherapy or he's studying creative business or he's studying communication or he's studying software, it doesn't matter. They have to learn to think critical, and they have to learn how to design, because that's the only way in your own professional practice later on how you can come up with great ideas to solve a problem. You can't analyze your way out, to quote you yourself, Arne, what you said before. Yeah. So if we just teach them how to analyze, They will try to analyze the way out. If we teach them that they can analyze and you can have to design and create and stuff like that, and possibly we develop a new generation of professionals who, for whatever problem there pops up, the first thing they will do is like, I need other people around me, diversity. And you know what? This sounds like innovation. Maybe we shouldn't try to analyze. Maybe we should try to make things first. But this is where we're amidst of this change in education in the Netherlands.
Right.
Higher education.
So I understand. I think that one of the things that I think should be solved and will be solved, maybe not completely but will be solved by this, is that now, and it's being sort of, I think when the whole movement around service design started in Europe, what also happened is that all of a sudden we were expecting certain people, designers, creatives, to be superhuman beings. Like they could do everything. They can be researchers, they could be graphic designers, they could be, data visualizers, they could be strategic people, they could be facilitators, they could be everything. Whereas, and then they said, oh, that's called a service designer or something, which is something I've never understood what that was, because what exactly are you? But what I do feel is that so it's a team effort. It's actually, you have to get these people together and they have to be able to collaborate together and understand that it's better together, basically. However,
there's no other way.
Exactly. And there is no other way.
Complex for any single mind.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what kind of, how smart you are, you can't solve it on your own.
Exactly.
And that's the first thing we need to teach young people.
Yes.
Whatever you do, if it's a complex problem, get a team together.
Exactly. But is it then also a specific skill to get that team together? So, this is a creative leadership podcast. And and I'm not talking about hierarchy, but I'm talking about self-leadership, and it is sort of a leadership quality in each and every one of us, and not sort of this, so you were really good at one kind of specific topic, but you also have a leadership quality, and we need to kind of understand that you have to create this safe space, psychological safe space for people to actually work together, but also to have those because I like the fact that you kind of just mentioned these conflicts that you can have, because these conflicts are just as important as in the creative process as it being smooth and happy and everybody's fantastic and agreeing. Disagreement, is
source of innovation.
Yes, of course it is, because I always say, if it doesn't hurt, you're not doing it right. So.
And my similar approach is, I always say those teams who are happy clappy getting to the end, they never win the competition.
Exactly.
It is those teams that are fighting and have arguments and disagree on anything, but in the end come up with something they agree on. Those are the
and that is, but again, in a way, that's almost common knowledge that this is the forming, storming, norming, and performing kind of process, right? Is that if you survive your storming moment, if you survive the argument and you can truly get together, you can then really start performing. But it's the courage and the sort of the knowledge of where are you and how. That tension is okay, and disagreement is okay, but create that space. So someone needs to allow those spaces, because if those students go to any business now and they say, they try to apply it, they don't get that environment where they can actually practice that. Now, I know there's a lot of agile companies at the moment. They're changed into these agile models where they work in tribes and squads and the likes. And if you are if you're in a tribe, you are almost, you're a self-sufficient team. You're very independent in making your decisions. Now, that's to be quite honest, maybe a little bit cynical, most companies, that's just language, and people are totally confused because nothing really changed. They still Monday morning go to work and sit by, and they're like, I'm in the tribe now. What do I do? I don't know. But that's my experience working with some agile companies. But it's just, again, it is the start. It's just the start. We just started doing these things. So it's also amazing that these companies are there and they're doing this, because it's part of this evolution, and we're seeing it. Just the acknowledgement that we have to be agile, that we have to do this or reorganize ourselves is great. But these students, I'm just really worried about them in the sense that we need to kind of then also make sure that will they end up in an environment where they are able to kind of use those skills, or will they become very cynical? And I'm saying that because I've been, to your point, also when you talked about the burnouts, when I've been teaching people who are, for instance, in sales, and they went through this design thinking course because they had to, because their boss told them they just had to have the certificate, basically, and they went through the training, and they all knew, like, we can't apply it because no way I can do this in my company. So they actually became a little bit more frustrated because they understood the value of it. I mean, these smart people, so they got it. It's just that, how do you make sure that, where do they go? Do you feel that companies are changing?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. But the thing is, Arne, we're talking about paradigm change again. And another one of those famous books I read, Thomas Kuhn, it's about where the words paradigm change comes from. And what he says, and I'm going to make it very simple, he does as well, by the way, we kind of look back at those paradigm changing moments as if it was like that, like spot on, just overnight, it happened. And he uses this famous example of the Earth orbiting the Sun, or the Sun orbiting the Earth. That's Copernicus. He says, Copernicus took a long time to write it. He didn't publish it when he was alive because he knew he would be killed, or he would be in trouble. And even when it was published, it took them another 80 years before it was considered the most appropriate theory to explain what's going on. And what I like about that book is that he says that he describes the process of how paradigms change. He says, first, there are that's a difficult word, anomalies, so small ruptures that we cannot explain anymore. Things are going wrong. At first, we ignore them. After some time, we try to explain them with very weird kind of theories. Then sometimes someone comes up with another theory which explains the small ruptures but can't explain all the other things. Basically, the discussion you and I just had, because yes, efficiency is needed as well every now and then, and design thinking can't deal with that. But we're part of a paradigm change. In the end, someone will come up with another bigger paradigm, bigger than the control and capitalism and efficiency paradigm we're in right now, but it's going to take a long time. Maybe it's the donut economy. Maybe, I don't know yet. Maybe I don't know which one it is. The purpose, I don't know which one it is. But it's going to take 20, 30, 40 years. That's basically it.
Exactly.
And we're right in the middle of it. And what I like is it's going to take 30, 40 years, but fortunately I'm on the side that we're moving to.
Yeah.
Because and now I'm saying something that maybe is not so good for the podcast, but I'm very happy I'm not part of the big oil companies or stuff like that, who are always very big and stuff like that. They're going down very slowly. They're going down. That's really funny to see.
Yeah.
They didn't change their paradigm. They didn't went along with what is happening. Yeah. And it's just an example, but Exxon, one of those big oil companies, is dropped out from the biggest economy index of the world, because they're not so important anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
They lose their relevancy completely.
Yeah, exactly. So, which is, so there's. Yeah. So I. Yeah, no, go ahead.
It was a detour, sorry, but what I'm saying is I rather be part of a movement that tries to develop students who are used to ambiguity, who are used to working in teams, who know that it's hard. They understand that it's going to take creativity to get a problem solved, rather than just being very analytical. And yes, sometimes some of them will be very disappointed in real life for the time being. But that's the only way how we can move on, how we can change.
Yeah, that's very true. I wanted to talk a little bit about something you just shared before we started recording, because when you started writing your book, and I thought it was a really powerful story because it had because you had you had a series of small strokes.
Well, actually quite big ones.
Oh, yeah, also big ones? Okay.
Yeah.
And can you retell that story? Because I thought it was such a powerful story.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So,
yeah, that's yeah. The thing is, I never had time.
Yeah.
To write a book and stuff like that, because I was always moving forward, typical for design thinking, rushing, going forward. Yeah. Then I had a series of strokes, indeed, and serious strokes and risky strokes. And then at one moment in time, I lost my eyesight, first completely, and it slowly got back.
Mm-hmm.
But from 80% loss up till 30% took 2 years. And the thing was, I could not read anymore and stuff like that. So it was a little bit weird situation.
Mm-hmm. To say the least.
Yeah. Well, maybe the weirdest part is that I was not concerned, but everyone around me was a lot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Because when it concerns yourself, at least that's for me.
Yeah.
You're a bit more like, okay, this is the new situation.
Mm-hmm.
So how I move on, I don't know yet. But the funny thing is, and I think you're referring to that, is I need to learn to type blindly and stuff like that in order to be able to communicate and stuff like that. And then I had to write all these boring stuff, because they just gave me something like a podcast basically, and I had to type it out blindly. And I was like, I
could have used you.
Actually, yes. By then you could have used me. I was transcribing stuff, and But actually, I'm a creative, so I was a bit more like, is it okay if I start writing a book? So during that period, I started to write the book on design thinking. It's Dutch, by the way, unfortunately for the others who are listening to it who are not Dutch. And I could finish it for, I think, 60-70% already. Then I sent it to a couple of publishers, and they were all very interested. And so it became a bestseller in the Netherlands. But the thing is, even then, maybe that's the reason why you liked it. No, why did you like it?
Well, I like it because it has something to do with something we talked about earlier. I think we weren't recording there too. You said, so I do this podcast as part of a research into creative people and people who are, all of them are in a way change makers, or they, but. So I told you about an interview I did with Gordon Domza, and where he had, certain things happen and they're coincidental, but you said, yeah, but he picks up on it. He recognizes it. He takes that opportunity as an opportunity. Yeah. And in a way, that's what you did. You didn't go like, all right, I'll do this. You said, well, I can create something. So there's this, somehow there is a creative energy in you that makes total sense for you to then start writing a book in a situation where most people would go like, that's not what you started writing a book when? Like when you couldn't write anymore. Yeah. So I thought it was a really interesting, it's almost symbolic for what you were describing.
How dealing with in a way, this is resilience.
It's
on a personal level. So I had to deal with this, and I was a bit like, and I'm just saying it as if I knew what I was doing. No, it was not like that. Mm-hmm. In hindsight, I can say it sounds like resilience, and yes, it was turning something bad into something good. That's all in hindsight. Yeah. You know what happened at the time being? I was just bored, bored to death.
Course. Yeah.
Transcribing. You know what? Can I just cut come up with my own stuff, and then you read it, and then you say if I did it well or not, and then that's also a possibility, and then it happens. So in hindsight, we can explain each other the stories why we did something. On the moment itself, you have to trust your gut feeling.
Exactly. Yeah, but exactly. So you don't have, because that also tells you that you don't have to know why you're doing things the way you're doing. Just, it's okay to kind of not know that, but you trust your instinct.
Explore the not knowing.
Exactly. So I think that's really powerful. And for the Dutch, I mean, will it be translated? What I mean,
this question has been asked so often that maybe I should make some work out of it.
It will be translated. All right.
Now the thing is probably I need another stroke before I actually do something like that because this is boring for me. You understand?
Well, you don't have to
personally, it's boring.
You don't have to translate it yourself. You have publishers who can help you with that. You can just have it translated.
But then it's still it needs mental effort.
I know.
You
of
need to
course.
go there to check the words. I know. But anyway, that's yes.
But if it's
it's going to be translated. It's going to be translated.
But that's when it's translated in English. If it's translated in Chinese, you can't do anything anyway. You don't know what it says. So
no, but probably we're going to have a second edition because I don't know where.
So for the Dutch people, what's the title and where can they get it?
It's design thinking, radicaal veranderen in kleine stappen, and it's quite a bestseller. It was best management book of the year in 2018. So it's easy to find. Don't worry about it. If you type in design thinking books, then you're there already in the Netherlands. For the English listeners, what I focus on most of it, that's the subtitle, Radical Change in Small Steps. And that's basically what I think that we're talking about and on in different ways. Is people believe that we need leaders with great visionaries, whereas in the reality, it's much more about trusting your guts, doing a small step, testing it. No, it's not working out. Doing something else. No, it's not working out. Testing it again. Hey, this looks like something like a nice idea. Maybe I should go on to that, and on and on and on. And the funny thing is, I wrote it most of all for students. And it became a management book of the year, which was really hilarious. I was explaining it to the jury in front of the audience. I didn't write it for you guys. but here's the nice part of it, Arne, and that's you. I kind of hear you say again and again that managers don't understand yet, corporates don't understand yet, but they decide that this is the book they like.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, I'm hopeful for the people. I think I see that and I understand it because I think the individuals, the people in these corporates and those managers, these are really smart people. I mean, I'm not smarter than they are. They see it. They know it. It's a systemic problem. We're in a systemic problem, and that is and that's it. And we're caught in that. We're all caught in that. It's not because one group is smarter than the other group. No, not at all. So I think we're in a systemic problem. And again, we're going back to complexity. And to your point, we change it because of these small steps. So I think the answer to the complexity that you're describing, I totally understand why people kind of want to know that and want to kind of follow that route, because it's the only possible way, because you cannot change that system at once. There's no way. You have to take small steps. So it's so logical, and we need people to tell us how do we do it? What are those small steps, and give us confidence, to that is the way. So I totally see why your book is so relevant and your message is so relevant. So
it's, by the way, a small story, not from my book, but from another one of those great authors I like, and he actually stole it. This is the funny part of it, but forget about that. It's Carl Wake, and he is about sense making and stuff like that. And he has this story in one of his books, and he says there was this battalion of soldiers in the Second World War. They were German, by the way. So for those who think now that it's just what happened, he writes it. It doesn't matter. They were German, but they were stuck in the Alps in the snow in the evening. They were lost. They were stuck in the snow. The snow was dropping down. It was getting colder and colder, and they knew that if they were in deep shit, to put it mildly. So they had to stay there in the night. They were freezing to death, and the next day everything was white. They didn't know what to do and stuff like that. So what shall we do? Stick and whatever. Then someone discovered he has a map in his back. And they take the map, they take a look around, they started walking through the snow, and when the snow is melting a little bit, they find their way back and they come back to the base camp. Now, the funny thing is, the map he had turned out to be of another mountain area, the Pyrenees. I don't know what the English word is. The Pyrenees, I don't know what it is. But he had the wrong map. But the point is that this guy was making, start moving, because when you move, you will discover your way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's radicaal verandering, kleine stappen, radical change in small steps. Start moving, guys. If you want to have systemic change, start moving. Don't try to change the system all at once. Just start moving and find your way in between, the ongoing.
Yeah.
And one thing is for sure, whatever design you have with you, whatever map you take along with you, it's the wrong one.
Exactly.
So
that's interesting. That's really good. That brings me back to a story from *Sapiens* about maps, and where he describes that in the 14th and 15th century they had world maps that were all filled in, no blank spaces, no open spaces. It all, when they didn't know what was out there, they put some monsters there or something, right? And then all of a sudden, this, is again back to that idea of it's okay not to know, because that's actually really interesting. Maps appeared with open spaces. They just put in what they knew, and the rest was open, and that sparked curiosity, and people would go find out what's out there. Even if it killed them, they would go and sail into those areas. So it's this kind of interesting, again, balance between it's okay, you don't know everything. It's okay. Don't pretend you know everything. But these open spaces are okay, and you go venture into it and start. The map is broken. It's not a good map. It's because it's just partly filled in. We have no clue what's out there, but it allows you to move. It allows you to go places. It's
fill in the blank. Try to fill it in. That's the wonder.
Yeah, exactly. And I that's really cool. So I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. And it was a good way also to end with the podcast, because of that kind of good advice, very, very, very relevant. And so thank you very much for being a guest on this show. I enjoyed that, and it's good to kind of, because it's been quite a few years since we've talked, so I enjoyed that.
Apparently, we're still on the same walk together. That's the funny thing. We can walk. We can walk the different things, but we're still on the same route.
Yeah, which is nice.
It's funny.
That's nice to know. All right.
Thank you very much for interviewing.